The next step after you figure out what product you're going to sell is figuring out, is this product viable? Is it viable to ship? Is it legal to sell? Is it something that consumers actually want? We're going to walk through in this lesson how to figure all of that out. Overall, there are three main questions that you need to be asking yourself to understand if your product is viable for the market. So, question number one, is this idea practical? Question number two, what obstacles stand in the way to making it, really come to life and getting it out to consumers? And number three, will it need support services? Maybe you're selling a product that needs a little bit more hands-on help to really ensure customer satisfaction. For that first question, is this idea practical? Think of something kind of like Ginny's ice cream. If you've ever heard of them or had their ice cream, it's amazing. Ginny's ice cream has been selling online for the past few years. And one of the main kind of hurdles that they really had to overcome in terms of is this practical is how the heck do you ship ice cream without it melting before somebody gets it, right? I mean, you don't want to just deliver a bucket of mush, right? So they ended up having to figure out that they needed to use dry ice in order to pack the ice cream in so that no matter where they shipped it, it would show up still frozen. That is a really great example of, is this practical? Do you have those resources? Is it going to actually make it to the customer in the shape and form that you need it to? If that answer is no, you need to overcome an obstacle, which we'll talk here about in a second, or two, maybe you need to find a little bit different of a product. Maybe it isn't actually viable for the market, and that's why there is a hole in the market for that product. For question number two, what obstacles lie ahead in getting this to market? Think about something like CBD, which we talked a little bit about in our last lesson. It has been booming since probably early 2016 or so, and you might be asking, why haven't more people hopped on that trend? Why didn't more people see that coming? The answer to that is that a lot of people did. It just wasn't legal, maybe in their state or in other states, to actually sell CBD. That's a real obstacle that you have to decide, am I gonna, decide to put money and time and resources into this to potentially have it all shut down by laws and regulations? Or is this something that I still want to continue to go after? Another really great example of a kind of unique obstacle in getting to market is the mattress industry, right? So quick tidbit for you. Just because you see a hole in the market doesn't necessarily mean that people haven't been trying to fill that hole. So let's back up to maybe 5-6 years ago, maybe as Casper and some of those brands were beginning to come online. It's not that folks didn't want to sell mattresses online. It's that they couldn't figure out how to ship those items cost effectively to people. The solution was producing foam mattresses that could easily be, rolled up and put into a box and shipped over, and then you unroll it and it still magically is the mattress that you need it to be. That was a true innovation, a true overcoming of an obstacle that I believe it was Casper who was really the first to go into it. Now that's common for all of us in terms of what we expect from mattress companies, and it's happening not even just with foam anymore. Parachute now has a non-foam mattress that they roll up for you, send to your door. Again, that's an example of an obstacle that you have to overcome. Again, if you see that there's this kind of hole in the market, really begin to think through, why does that hole exist and what kind of unique thought processes or innovations can I bring to that market in order to get this product to where I need it to be? Casper clearly did it and was incredibly, incredibly successful for doing so. And then the final question to ask yourself is, are you selling a product, or have you chosen to sell a product that maybe is going to need a little bit of services or maybe some hands-on help in order to ensure customer satisfaction? So a really great example of this is succulents, right? So selling succulents online, great idea. They ship really well, right? They're small and expensive to ship. The problem, though, is that if your customer doesn't take care of them, then suddenly you no longer have a succulent. So a lot of succulent brands like Mountain Crest Gardens, for instance, have been launching education sites, right? Offering you videos and content and manuals to figure out how to take care of the plant so that even their customers who don't have a green thumb can still, log onto the site, get a manual sent to them, and make sure that the succulents that they paid good money for continue to live and that customer can get everything they want out of them. All right, so beyond those three kind of, top level overview questions, there are some more tactical things that you really need to think about. For instance, the product's weight and size, because that is going to immediately affect how much it's going to cost you to ship that item to somebody. And we know that shipping is a big reason why people do or do not buy something, and you can thank Amazon for that. What about its fragility? Like, is it going to break on the way there? And if so, how are you going to have to package it so that it doesn't do that? What about the amount of SKUs you have? So a SKU is an individual business unit or an individual kind of product unit. So say you are selling t-shirts, right? But each t-shirt that you make comes in red, blue, and green. And on top of that, red, blue, and green can come in small, medium, and large. You suddenly have a lot of products. Now, that isn't necessarily a bad thing, and consumers certainly like choice, but where that can kind of begin to affect you is if you're using a third-party logistics provider, or if you are having to kind of bulk order in the products that you're going to be selling, you're gonna have to buy 10 to 20 to 30 of each individual SKU item. That's a lot of upfront money for you. So those are just a few of the individual questions that you kind of need to be thinking through in terms of the real tactical meat and potatoes. Does this make sense? Can I afford it? And will customers buy from me if I have to raise the price on them in order for me to afford it? Also think through, product lifespan and seasonality. So seasonality, for instance, maybe think about, products that people tend to buy only around back to school time, but then kind of don't buy at all throughout the rest of the year. Now, that does not mean that that's not a great product for you to launch into. There's a community, there's probably a pain point to solve for, all of the ideas and the thought processes that we've covered in other lessons, all of that's there. But it is important for you to know as a business owner that business probably isn't going to sustain your entire salary or revenue for a full year, right? So maybe this is a part-time job until you begin to add on additional products, or how can you really win as much of that market as possible so that for that, small window of time in which people are really looking for that product, that you are able to capture the largest market size. My most recent project is starting Dora Sleep, which is a direct-to-consumer online brand. So let me help you kind of bring all of this to life, because this is exactly what I did when I was launching Dora Sleep. So for Dora Sleep, product size and weight. I know what you're thinking. Pillows aren't that big, they're really soft, they're not that heavy. All of that's right and accurate, except for the fact that shipping is based, at least in the US, on dimensional weight, which means if you have a product that is bigger than it is heavy, you ultimately are paying a whole lot more to ship that item. It's kind of the same issue that mattress companies had before they, really wrapped them up and made them really small, right? So with pillows, I could, compress those pillows to ship them out much cheaper. The problem though is that I don't sell pillows that have foam. So instead, I really needed to think through, can I add some kind of shipping buffer into my price? Do I think that consumers will still shop even if there's a pretty big shipping charge at the end? It's not a no-go if you can't maybe figure out a way around it, but it's definitely something that you really need to take into account as you begin to build out your strategy. Another one is SKUs, right? So I sell 3 pillows, and each one of those pillows is sold in a standard and a queen size. Now, I could have also sold in a king size, but I have strategically chosen not to do that, mostly because even though it looks to anybody coming to my site that I sell only 3 pillows, I'm actually selling 6. Which means I use a 3PL, so a third-party logistics provider, and it costs me money to have those items sit in that warehouse and maybe be sold or not be sold, right? So I have to buy about 20 pillows for each one of those 6 individual SKUs, and I have to continue doing that every single time that I order from my manufacturer. So it's just an additional charge for me, which those 6 SKUs I am happy with, but if I added king to each one of those, that would have been 3 additional SKUs on top of that, and that is not something that I wanted to go after. So for product fragility, I sell pillows, so I'm not too terribly worried about them, but something to keep in mind, or at least that I kept in mind in this regard, is product fragility doesn't necessarily mean, will your product break? For me, nobody wants to get a pillow that's been shipped to them that's like wet, or I don't know, has had whatever would happen in shipping done to it. So I make sure that all of my pillows, each one of them is individually covered with a plastic wrapper in order to make sure that if any dirt gets in there, if any water gets in there, it will not matter. Your pillow will be completely safe and fine. So definitely make sure you think about that. In terms of product lifespan, this is something really helpful to think through in terms of how often are people going to need to come back and buy from you. People should be buying new pillows about every 2 years. Now, do they do that? Not everyone, at least most of the people I've talked to don't. So that means for me that that's an education opportunity that I can build content around and really help people understand, why you need to be buying a pillow every 2 years, right? This was also a concern in the mattress industry as well that Casper and others really had to deal with, which is when you buy a mattress, you don't need another mattress for 8 to 10 years. So where's the customer loyalty in there, right? Now, all of those companies have figured out ways to deal with that. Casper has a whole blog and education center on sleep habits, and they've expanded their product lines, but they've only done all of that really more recently. So even if your product doesn't have an incredibly high, lifespan in terms of people coming back and buying from you, that does not necessarily mean you shouldn't sell it. It's just a consideration fact that you need to be taking into account as you build out your strategy. All right, so we have thrown a ton of questions at you, and you probably have so many little, answers and thoughts running through your head. Just know that there are no right or wrong answers to any of these. Instead, it's really about trying to figure out, if you are prepared for what the answers to those questions are and how you can build a brand and a product and a community that addresses those issues while still getting you the margins that you need to be a successful and profitable business. So after you have thought about these questions and come to the conclusion that this product, the product you are planning on selling, is viable for the market, that the problems and the issues, and keep in mind, every product will have those, are things that you can address, then you are ready for the next lesson in which we walk through how to do a competitive analysis and see what other people selling products just like yours are doing.